David Frangioni, CEO of Modern Drummer. Welcome everybody back to the Modern Drummer podcast. We're live backstage in West Palm Beach with the one and only Brooks Wackerman. Brooks,
hello,
good
hello.
to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
On the road with Avenged Sevenfold, of course. You've been with now for about 8 years.
Yep,
right?
I joined in 2015. Yeah, so
fantastic.
yeah.
Well, I want to hear all about what you're up to, but let's kind of recap, because your life and career to me is so fascinating with your siblings and your dad, and just how your life has really been completely immersed really in music and of course drumming, very differently than a lot of people grow up in the household that you are the youngest of. And just let's start at the beginning for a second. Obviously one of your brothers is Chad Wackerman. All the drummers out there know Chad from his established career. So he's your older brother. So when you're growing up, that must have impacted you at a very young age, right? To kind of find the drums, or what happened? How did it start?
Yeah, so I mean, there's quite an age gap between Chad and I. I think he's 64, 65. I'm 46. So he was already out of the house touring with Frank Holdsworth. But my parents would take me to, Zappa rehearsals, baked potato shows in LA. So we were constantly exposed to many styles of music.
And there are drum sets at the house, right? Or a drum set, I would imagine.
Yeah, probably in half the rooms you could find a drum set. No joke. And so I being around that, it was very contagious to, want to, pick up some sticks after seeing my brother play.
What age are you at now? When does this discovery and passion kind of start to build?
I want to say 6 or 7. So, and that's when I discovered, I think Van Halen, and, was listening to Tony Williams. And these were records that were being played in my house. So,
and that's a young age to be exposed. I mean, like Tony, was it Miles Tony, or was it like Lifetime?
It was more Lifetime.
Okay, so it's like fusion, so it's still got an electric vibe to it.
Yeah, so my dad, and I think Chad's vinyls were still in the house because he needed storage. So I would just pull out everything from, Journey records to Miles to, Devo. And so it was all over the place.
And you're listening to them and playing to them, or at this point you're just kind of listening and kind of...
I think, at 6, I'm just trying to figure it out, So but, soon after I started taking privately from Murray Spivak and Chuck Flores. So
that young, you had that level of teacher.
Yeah.
That's great guidance at that age.
Absolutely. So they were pivotal, roles in my life. But yeah, I mean, it was all due to my father introducing music into our lives, and I couldn't ask for more supportive parents.
Was he a drummer?
Yeah. Drumming was his primary instrument.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so when I started taking privately, we live in Long Beach, which is an hour south of LA, and both teachers were in LA. So he would pull me out of school, which I always looked forward to, because I was just a daydreamer in school and was not into it. So yeah, we would be in traffic, for hours on end just for this 45-minute lesson with,
So supportive.
So supportive. Wow. So it was an anomaly to some people, but I think when you have a father that's as into music as my dad was, and my mom too. I mean, she loved music. It was definitely a nice springboard into what I'm doing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you're studying with Murray, does he start you on the pad? Is it like a very
It's all
traditional?
pad.
It's all pad. So
It's
your
all pad.
technique, really figuring out hands and just really starting at a solid place.
And because I was so young, I presented quite a challenge to him, because, he was trying to introduce fractions to me, and it was just over my head. I knew I loved drumming, but it took a while to really comprehend his, scientific method, with the up and down stroke. You know, it was, you know, I guess what drummers practice as Moeller technique, you know, his was a form of that, but different. So, but yeah, we would study stick control, accents and rebounds, Podemsky, you know, all the drumming Bibles.
And when did you start developing a discipline to practice that, to actually go home and shed it and come back and be ready? Because that's such a young age to kind of, you know, get into a groove.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. So, you know, my dad definitely had to push me into a regimen, because you know, I knew I wanted to become a drummer, but now it's getting into the science of it. So you know,
it's not easy.
It's not easy. So yeah, he definitely stayed on me with, you know, okay, well, you can do. I was also into karate too, so I was like, okay, well, you can go to karate, but you have to do stick control for, you know, an hour a day or whatever it was. But then eventually, I really got into the method of it all, and something clicked after a couple of years of studying.
And now you wanted to do it as opposed to someone asking you to do it.
Yeah.
Your dad inspired
Yes,
you
my
to do it.
father, you know, navigated me into how to practice, and then once I saw the improvement, then I took it from there.
Right, it becomes a lot more fun, right?
Yeah.
And when do you migrate to the drum kit? When does Murray take you from the pad to the kit, or Chuck Flores, or when does that happen?
Yeah, Murray was strictly pad, so all classical snare drum exercises, and then, I mean, I was playing drum set, but I didn't really get into independence until I met Chuck.
Oh, okay.
And that was life-changing.
Did he use the Chapin book for independence, or
he had his own book called Independence 1 and 2. Okay. And so we started there, and then we did Even in the Odds by Ralph Humphrey.
Sure.
But no, we didn't go over Jim's book.
But it was all of that kind of stuff you're working on four-way independence.
Yeah, yeah. And then I was playing in my dad's jazz band, so, you know, I'd have open solos and would need, you know, kind of a roadmap as to how to turn it into like a motif and not just playing drums or gymnastic drums. Sure. So Chuck would help me with structure and motif and how to structure a drum solo properly, and how to play musically.
And so now, are we in junior high school yet? Are you 13, 14? You're still studying with these guys? What happens in that time period?
Yeah, it's junior high. So I want to say 6th grade. I'm still studying, and then I think I stopped maybe in 9th grade, because that's when I started touring with bands. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's a big jump, especially at that age.
Yeah.
All right. So before we get to the touring in 9th grade, we were talking off camera, and you were sharing a story about Louie Bellson. I had studied with him for a minute. You had even a more incredible moment. You had what I dreamt of doing, you did. So share that, please, because that's just once in a lifetime, or as many times as you can be blessed in a lifetime.
So my father, who ran this, pretty much made the jazz program what it is at the high school that I went to, Los Alamitos High School / OSHA, Orange County High School of the Arts. He would bring out a jazz artist each year, and Louie was always in the revolving door of artists that he would bring out. So I think the second time he came out when I was in school, my dad asked him, hey, would you mind trading fours with my son, who's in my junior high band? And I mean, you know, Louie, he was just like the sweetest man in the world.
He was amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't get better than, you know, that guy's character. And he said, yeah, of course. And so there's video of me trading fours with Louie in my house now.
How did it go? How did that? I mean, it had to be so nerve wracking. I mean, trading fours with any drummer at the age you're,
and especially Louie Bellson.
One of the greatest drummers of all time.
I knew I had to do it, even as nervous as I was. And once I got up there, I mean, he just made me feel so comfortable. I mean, yeah, I'm,
And you held your own.
I held my own.
mounted
I
and you
think,
could get through it. You've been
the-
practicing a lot by then, right?
Yeah.
So you have.
I was
you
playing
have
in the
some
jazz
chops going.
band for a while, but yeah, I mean, to be, up against
from
Louie Bellson, but I mean, he was so non-competitive, it's like
He kept it musical and fun.
he did. Yeah. I mean, he was on fire, of course. And
Yeah.
I was just, just a little
I can't wait.
punk
You
kid
gotta
trying
find
to,
that video.
yeah,
Oh,
I will.
I
Yeah.
gotta see it.
I'll send it to you.
So fantastic.
But yeah, I mean, besides that being a very memorable experience, I just remember his character and just how welcoming he was. Like,
So the whole experience was
the
really
whole
a
experience,
moment,
yeah.
right? Besides the fact that you're on stage,
Yeah,
right?
and
being
just
around him.
how he carried himself, and he did a clinic earlier in the day at the auditorium that we were playing at, and he was just such a gentleman. It was like there was no ego, and everyone in that clinic just walked out of there so
You were there.
inspired. Yeah,
And
Yeah.
it was a great learning experience.
he's just he was the man. It's hard to find. You hear all these Buddy Rich stories, and
yeah. Tougher personality.
tougher personality, but I mean, obviously he got away with it because he was just the world's best drummer. But yeah, and all those bus tapes too. I mean, what a face.
Different extreme.
Yeah. But Louis was different. He was just, he just had this very welcoming thing about him.
And it made an impact at you when you were that age, and you could kind of
I think
differentiate between those types of personalities, because it's very impressionable when we're that young.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was digesting, all these musicians' personalities, everyone from Frank Zappa to Louie Bellson to, watching Van Halen on MTV. And so I think it was just taking it all in and just going, wow, just how drastically different these knuckleheads are,
Hi, it's David Frangioni, CEO of Modern Drummer. Thank you for leading our drumming community and being such a significant and important part of everything we do here at Modern Drummer. We're so excited. Please hit the subscribe button to Modern Drummer's YouTube channel. It's just hit it below. Be part of everything we're doing every day, every week, every month. Also, check out our shop. It's so exciting for drummers to check out. We got back issues, got some incredible drummers. We've got shirts, we've got hats, we've got notebooks, we've got education. It's all there. If you love drums and drumming like I do, and I'm sure you do, and all of us at Modern Drummer are so passionate about, you got to check out the shop at moderndrummer.com. And please, again, hit the link and subscribe to the Modern Drummer YouTube channel. I'll see you again soon.
And then what happens that you start touring in the 9th grade? And how do you manage that with high school?
Luckily, there's tutors that tour with you. So,
Okay, so your dad made sure you still got an education.
Yeah. So I'll rewind a bit. I went to the NAMM show and saw this 9-year-old guitar player play by the name of Thomas McLaughlin from England. And he was playing at the Ibanez booth. And I had heard about this guy, or kid, I should say. And he was just this amazing guitar player. His fingers were half the size of mine. And he was playing like Steve Vai. And Steve Vai was kind of his mentor. So
Literally.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I met his dad, who came up to me, and I had like hair down to my ass when I was 12 years old. And I was this rocker dude. He said, "Hey, you look like you're a musician, are you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a drummer." He's like, "Okay, well, my son just got signed to Interscope Records and we're trying to form a band. Can we exchange contact info?" And so next time they flew back from England, we got together, and I was the drummer in this like prodigy group that Jimmy Iovine was forming. So that was
a kid prodigy group,
kid.
right?
Yeah.
But how is this sounds so random. How do you connect with the dad at a NAMM show where there's 3 million people?
Because I looked the part at the time, and I was
somehow
11 or 12 years old, and he just had a sense that I was a musician.
Wow.
So knew nothing about me.
What's
and I
the
joined
band
the
called?
band. It was
That
called
time?
Bad for Good.
Bad for
And
Good, okay.
Steve Vai produced that band.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
and
you
wrote,
have Jimmy Iovine, you're
Yeah.
signed to Interscope, Steve Vai's producing. I mean, this is like
all the stars
unbelievable.
aligned in ninth grade.
Wow. And so,
So
what
it was-
happens?
So what I always wanted was now coming to fruition where, because I never could find kids my age that were serious about, music. It's everyone.
So you ended up finding adults
yeah.
who are not only serious but
yeah.
iconic.
Exactly. So we recorded our record for Interscope. And,
Where do you record it? Where do they bring it?
Ocean Way Studios in Hollywood.
Wow, Alan Side's place.
Yeah.
Okay, so you end
Yeah.
up at Ocean Way.
Ocean Way.
And where do the songs come from? Who's writing the songs?
Steve Vai is writing the songs.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So he had all
And
the
this
songs.
is instrumental, or this is with a vocal?
No, we had a singer.
Okay,
Yeah.
so they're
Danny
it's like-
Cooksey.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what happens?
So the album's released, and there's obviously restrictions because of how young we are. So we
It's
weren't.
very complicated
Yeah.
when you have
So-
minors as it is.
So we got a tour with Joe Satriani, and we opened up for him. I think it was only like 2.5 weeks, and on that tour, we had 4 parents out because there was 4 band members, and we're all minors. So and a tutor to do schooling with us.
For all 4
which
of you? Okay.
it was a joke. I mean, we would like, walk to the museum for PE and do like 20 minutes of, where the red fern grows. So it was a very loose academic phase of my life, but
But you
we
were
were-
heading towards getting a diploma, at least.
exactly. Yeah. And I only got my diploma to appease my parents. So, but I graduated.
Yeah, congrats. That's amazing. That really is. And which parents on the road with you during all this?
My mother.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long does this tour go for?
So this was only 2.5 weeks.
So the tour was 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. So fairly short, but
Yeah.
as a young person, that's not that short.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
And how's it go?
It was fantastic. Yeah. I mean, we were playing like amphitheaters and it was
Big
like,
places. For
yeah,
that age.
it was like mid 90s. So like, Satriani was like at the peak of, his game there. And it was fantastic. I mean, it was what I always wanted to do as a musician,
But you
I mean, it sounds
manifested
silly
it
because I'm
so young.
Yeah. I'm like 13 or 14 at that time.
Right. Right.
Um,
I know it. No,
yeah.
it's, if you think at that age, we think to ourselves, I've been waiting all my life for this.
Right.
And then people,
Yeah.
when we get older, we go, your life hasn't barely even started yet.
It was a trip.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah,
So what
but-
happens after the tour, and how's the band kind of evolved through your high school years?
So there was I think a rift between our guitar player and another member in the band. I can't really remember, but musically, it wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to start writing our own music, and then it just kind of fizzled out. Interscope wasn't really interested in like developing the band beyond what we.
Oh, okay. Kind of
Released.
hit a wall.
It hit a wall. Yeah. So, so at the rehearsal hall that I would play at, I met Robert Trujillo, who's now in Metallica.
Sure.
And at that time he was playing with Infectious Grooves.
Okay.
So they were next door to us. He heard me rehearse during a break, and he had no idea that like my age or anything, but he luckily liked what he heard. And so I walk out of the rehearsal hall. He's like, "Was that you playing?" I was like, "How old are you?" So
And how old were you?
I think 14. Yeah. So met him. They're looking for a drummer, and so we exchanged numbers. I auditioned for that band, got the gig, and then I started playing with Robert in Infectious Grooves. So, and then that led to Suicidal Tendencies.
At
Which
what
is,
age?
We're probably at 15 now.
Things are happening fast.
Things are happening.
I mean,
yeah.
what's the secret here? Because you're literally you're manifesting from one to the other, like so quickly and naturally that it's just like, how is it coming together so organically and really, in hindsight, perfectly?
Yeah. Great question that I don't have an answer to. I mean, all I could say was during that time, I was just very driven and very focused on when I was home. I was constantly practicing.
Okay.
It's like
You wanted it badly, and you were
I
doing the work.
wanted it badly. Yeah. And,
But it sounds also like you were envisioning these incredible moments, and then they happen.
in a way,
Right?
yeah, I guess they call it, manifestation.
They do. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. So
But that's extraordinary. Like, I mean,
it was,
how it just keeps going.
yeah, no. And sure, you could say being at the right place at the right time, being at mates rehearsal studios, but also if I wasn't playing at that level where I wanted to play at,
You wouldn't have gotten his attention.
exactly. So, that just goes to show of, just know where you want to be, where you want to get at. And,
And at that
just
young age,
do
you were
the
so
work.
driven. Yeah, you
Yeah.
were doing the work.
Yeah.
But you were
So
also envisioning this big stage.
continuing on with bands. Yeah.
Right.
And at the end of Bad for Good, I was like, okay, I'm grateful for what we did, but musically, there's something else out there. And that luckily that's when I met Robert and
Amazing.
things
And
took
then
off.
that segues into Suicidal Tendencies.
Right. So
And meanwhile, you're still
that's-
tutoring, or you're living at home now and you're not
So
away so much?
I now have a tutor that I'm meeting with at my high school after school to catch up on the upcoming tour that I have. So I don't have the tutor with me anymore on the road.
But you're keeping up with your
I'm
grades.
keeping up with my grades.
Because I asked that because there are musicians out there, and that balance. Now
Yeah.
it's very different with the internet and that kind of thing. But then you didn't have that tool.
Right.
So you had to figure out, how do I stay and appease my parents and get an education and yet not slow down my career? Very difficult balance.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would have my itinerary, and then my tutor would figure out, okay, you have to do X amount of work before you leave. And then when you come back, you'll be all caught up. So
And you did it.
it was a whole calendar that I wasn't used to. But,
So when you
but I did it.
graduate high school finally, are you with Suicidal at that point?
So yes, I'm playing with Suicidal. Infectious isn't doing that much because Robert started working with Ozzy. So it was mostly Suicidal. Yeah, so that was my
And
main
you guys
gig.
are touring a lot. Like, it's a full-time
lot.
band.
It's
Like,
a
the
full-
machine's running.
Machine's running. Yeah.
And are you still practicing? Are you still growing?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah. I never stopped practicing. So
How about studying with Murray or Chuck or another teacher?
so once I started touring in high school, that's when I had to retire my private.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
still
I
keep the
still had,
practicing.
I still would wipe the dust off of the stick control book. And, I had enough material to, I guess like Steve Smith calls it, maintenance practicing, where
And that's the
just-
thing about drumming, right? It's a lifetime of
Commitment.
practice
Yeah.
and commitment and muscle memory that you never hit a point where it's like, okay, I got it. I don't need to practice, or I don't need to improve. It never
Right.
gets to that point.
Yeah, I think once you grow content, and contentment is the enemy of progression, that's when I think problems occur.
Yeah,
So
sure. Absolutely. And inspiration kind of suffers at that point.
That's
too,
right.
You want to just keep getting better and better and better.
Right.
And always get to the next level. But
Exactly.
you're doing that. So now Suicidal Tendency is going, and what is that? What's next in the evolution?
So I get a call from the guys in Bad Religion, who is looking for a drummer, and I think Travis Barker recommended me, Fletcher from Pennywise, and I want to say Josh Freeze is who they were calling. Like, do you know any drummers? And I guess my name kept on coming up, and we were doing like Warp tours together and everything. So
So you got to know these guys.
yeah, just more acquaintances. So they called me, and I was happy with Suicidal, and so I passed on it the first time around, and then Brett Gurwitz, the founder of Epitaph Records and who started Bad Religion, called me again a couple weeks later, and just broke down what the plans were, and they were going back to Epitaph Records after being on Atlantic for a number of years. And so I loved his enthusiasm and how they wanted to find like a real member in the band. And,
Okay.
and
So as opposed to a work for hire guy.
exactly,
You can now-
which I wasn't interested in.
Sure.
so I succumbed and said, well, let's meet. Let's see just if there's chemistry. So long story short, just went down to their rehearsal hall and we played a few songs and it clicked. And yeah, I had to leave Suicidal. But then this is now a new chapter
Sure.
in my life. So I
And
was
you loved it when you
loved
got
it.
in the gig. It was,
Oh,
it
yeah.
was like what you kind of experienced when it first clicked continued.
Yeah. And I also loved that when I joined, they were just about to start the recording process for the first record that I was on with them. So I was very much involved in, kind of the progression of that too.
And then how long does that last to get to Avenged Sevenfold and some of these
15 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm 114 years old over here.
Yeah, I'm doing the math and that actually makes sense at this point.
Yeah, after running down the list of bands I've been in, yeah. But
And
no.
it's a great 15 years. And how does it end?
It's
with
it's
Avenged
great,
Sevenfold?
yeah. I
How
mean,
does
with
that
Bad Religion, I
transition?
mean, the songwriting is like the two main songwriters are just so great, and they came up with this formula of songwriting that works for Bad Religion, and so I was just honored to be a part of that, for my tenure in the band. My personal manager toward the end of my Bad Religion years was also Avenged Sevenfold's tour manager. And so the guys start asking him, hey, do you think Brooks would be interested in just talking to us? We're trying to find someone new. And so he called me up, and at that time with Bad Religion, I was ready to open a different door.
It's a long time, 15 years.
It's
It
a
is.
long time, yeah. And also just musically, I wanted to try something else, and that's no knock to Bad Religion, but I had something in me where I wanted to now take a detour.
Sure.
So I went out to dinner with Matt and Brian from my band, for my now band, and we just talked about goals and what they were doing, what the future held. And I was a fan of Avenged before. I was very familiar with the catalog and loved the musicianship, songwriting. And so, yeah, we talked for 2.5 hours, and I knew that night that I was going to be joining another band.
And because it clicked again. That
It
was
clicked,
8 years ago.
Yeah. And with Avenged, I mean, it was just an entirely different animal that I was working with, as far as,
Than
always-
any of your other bands,
Yeah.
or than or just Bad Religion.
yeah, just, just how they approach everything from the production to records to, it's just a different angle that they're a different lens that they're looking through, where, how can we make it different, but still be under the Avenged umbrella, but still progress and
Stay true to the music and fans,
Yeah.
but evolve.
yeah, exactly. So
And that is a challenge when you think about it, right?
Sure.
'Cause you don't want to just refry,
right.
but you also can't go so far out that the fans are like, who is this? What is this?
Yeah. And we went pretty far out on this new record. So it,
And that's what you're touring on now, is the
That's
new
what we're
record.
tou-
And
exactly.
how's the reception to it? How's it going?
so it's been split down the middle, because the, like the hardcore fans. So let me put it this way. The best compliment I could get from someone is, I did not understand it until the 8th try. And I'm like, great, because I don't want you to just love it right off the bat. I want you to like digest it. So, I mean, it's a very different record for us. Of course, we have elements of like some classic Avenged on it, but how that record ends sounds like an entirely different band than how it begins. But that is also testament to how we're always trying to push the envelope too. So, it's interesting, like the real diehard, maybe not diehard fans. There's a couple of different types of Avenged fans. There's people that are like begging us to reproduce the first record all over again, but we're not going to do that, And then there's another fan where it's like, okay, well, we like the old stuff, but we also want to know what you guys are going to be surprising us with. So yeah, it's kind of all over the map, but by the end of the day, if we're happy with the product and we're not recreating the last record, then I think we're all...
You believe in it, and that's where it all starts.
Exactly.
Right? 'Cause the fans eventually will see the authenticity and the fact that these guys weren't trying to sell anything, so to speak. They were just doing
We're
what
just trying to
creatively
be
they believe.
as authentic as humanly possible. But it's interesting, like, just to see certain people's reactions, like, what? This is what we've been waiting 6 years for. It's like, just to be able to push someone's button that far. I mean, it's
a passionate fan base, though, that they care that much.
Oh, we have the best fans in the world. Yeah. I mean, and I want to hear, like, okay, well, if you have constructive criticism, how could we make it better? I want to hear your opinion. And if it's valid, then yeah, I'll be wrong.
And the tour's going great?
Tour's fantastic. Yeah. I mean,
you're doing the States right now.
We're doing the States. We did Canada. The majority of the state of the dates were Canada on the first leg. But yeah, tonight's the first show on this leg. Yeah, it's great to be back.
And you'll be out for a while? You guys are going to tour this record and work it pretty hard?
Yeah, we have 2 years worth of touring ahead of us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And at this point, that's your life, right? Being on the road for 2 years is just part of what you've spent your whole life doing.
Yeah.
Recording,
we still enjoy
touring.
Yeah.
And you still love it.
We still love playing live and seeing the songs evolve in a live setting is always a nice surprise, So yeah, I have no complaints.
And drumming wise, do you still practice and or warm up? Do you have a routine for before going on stage? Right now, like at this point in your career, we've been playing literally your whole life.
Yeah.
What's your routine or prep look like?
I still warm up an hour before the show. And
For how
long? So I stretch and I warm up and I kind of go back and forth. So I have a 5-piece pad kit with a double pedal, and I just go through everything from, flams to roll strokes to sections of songs that I'm playing live that night that I need to warm up with.
Loose, get the muscles going, warm them up, literally.
Yeah, and I'm just aware of my body, and if there's any tension, then I'll address it either with stretching or, just being mindful of how my body feels. So yeah, and I just take everything very slow at first, and then work my speeds up.
With a metronome or just?
With a metronome, yeah. I started playing with a metronome on the last tour. Yeah. Okay. Which I like because, just to start at the same BPM, I think is a healthy way to
you can gauge kind of where you're at
totally.
Every day and just make sure that you're not going too far too quick because playing a whole show after the warm-up, that's a lot of drumming that night.
That's right. Yeah.
That's awesome. And how long will the warm-up typically be? Because you don't want to burn out.
Yeah.
An hour?
An hour.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite a warm-up.
Yeah. Okay. But again, I'm not playing drums the whole hour. So I'm stretching.
Your muscles.
Yeah. I may have a conversation during that time, so yeah, it's an hour warm-up, but doing 3 or 4 different things simultaneously.
And it's a routine, which I found on tour, it's one of the most crucial things you can do to benefit outcome is get into a routine.
Routines.
It's really, so every show, you're going to be ready as opposed to with no routine things, happenstance is too risky on the road, right? When you play at the level that you do.
And everyone in my band, I think, subscribes to what you just said, with routine. I think we know at the stage what we have to do before we, start a show.
But you have the discipline and commitment to do it.
Yes.
So easy to say until you're on the road
it's
and you
important.
see how hard it is.
Yeah.
But you're committed to it.
Absolutely.
Did your dad teach you that young? Because what I get from getting to know you today is that there was a lot of discipline and commitment through your whole life and career.
Mm-hmm.
And that paid huge dividends
Mm-hmm.
for you at the level that you play and have consistently played,
Yeah.
and the musical situations that you were able to contribute to at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
The root of that just feels to me from what you're sharing that your dad really kind of set the table for some
He truly
really
did.
beneficial
Yeah.
habits, we'll call it, or approaches to life
Right.
and drumming.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's, hands down the reason where I got my work ethic from and my practice regimen. But he was very gentle too with his recommendations. He would say, okay, well, if you put this amount of time into, stick control or independence, I mean, you will see results. But, it wasn't threatening. It wasn't like,
He wasn't a drill sergeant.
he wasn't a drill sergeant. So, but he knew that I had passion for the instrument. But he definitely planted the seed for me to, realize, okay, if I spend the time, I'll see results. He was a master at that.
Yeah,
So,
giving you guidance. And he
Totally.
was an educator, right?
Yeah.
As not only a career drummer, but a career educator. So
Yeah.
he sounds like he influenced a lot of people. Obviously, his children, you can't compare to influencing your children, but just sounded like his whole life was really about
Yeah.
inspiring and educating.
Absolutely. No, we would go out for dinner and there would be, a slew of people that would come up to him and say, "Hey, I was in your class in 1968." And, and then their daughter would be in his class. So it was all these different generations of people, even if they weren't practicing music, it's like they remembered, what he instilled in them, and just the gift of music that he introduced into their lives.
What a role model.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to listen to Tony and listen to Van Halen
Right.
and meet Louie, but to have your dad be that impactful is awesome.
It was
I mean,
special. Yeah. It was
And
definitely special.
And it sounds like a big reason, if you will, how you were able to accelerate from such a young age and be consistent. I think that's one of the hardest things in the world is for someone to have a
Right.
career like yours. You have to have this level of consistency because you're changing as a person through all of these years.
Yeah.
But yet your drumming continues to grow and you stay committed to it and you're able to just kind of balance like how life is changing with being able to keep up with such a level of drumming.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
did he help you through those years too? Was he there as, because when you're in your 20s, it's a whole nother person than when you're in your teens and when you hit your 30s and now you have all this experience. There's a lot of things kind of coming at you, but you stayed the course.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always had a pretty solid work ethic. So when you asked me about my 20s, I think it was already in my DNA to
Be a drummer.
To be a drummer.
And what it took to do that.
And always learn, like always get out and, see new players and, don't, if you're in a rut, take a different approach, and so yeah, I knew rapidly how to, just remain consistent because I knew at a young age, okay, well, I'm practicing all these hours and now I'm playing with bands, musicians that I respect. And without doing that phase of my life, I want to be there. So it definitely left a indelible effect on me.
And even to this day, now as an adult, it's all formed.
Right.
But then, it's pretty awesome that you were able to see and kind of build into the subconscious, like if I do this, then that.
Yeah.
And, that's a very
and really
powerful...
it's consistency. It's not, as the cliche goes, it doesn't matter how many hours you practice. It matters how you practice and what you're working on, you know. So, and to this day, I subscribe to that notion.
Right. And you're still checking out drummers, and you're still
All the
just
time.
staying
Yeah.
fresh and inspired.
Yeah, that's, you know, with
And who are some of your favorite drummers right now? Who you checked
Mark
out?
Juliana,
Drummers.
you know, Jojo Mayer. You know, I love all the electronic acoustic drummers.
Right. This sound like there's 6 guys playing.
Yeah.
Right. And it's them.
Dan Wise, New York guy. He's like a bebop drummer, but then he also loves Meshuggah too. And there's like 20 other drummers that I can't think of right now.
And are you a guy that goes on YouTube and checks these guys out, or what's your way of that's
yeah? I mean,
back in the day we would get albums and we would
I
trade
go down
albums,
rabbit
but-
holes. Yeah, I'm a insomnia, so when I can't sleep, my friends will recommend drummers to me, or I'll just go on my Instagram and go, oh, okay, let's check out this kid from Iowa who's discovered this new form of drumming that I've never heard of. So
and the techniques out there.
Yeah.
It's incredible the
Yeah.
level of drumming that we're seeing from some of these guys.
yeah, it seems with our instrument, like no one pushes the envelope more than us drummers.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It's interesting.
And
Yeah.
no one pushes the envelope from such a young age as Brooks Wackerman. So Brooks, thank you for being here today, man.
Thank you so much. I
Thank
truly
you for
appreciate
sharing
it.
your life with us
Yeah.
and your story and career. There's so much to gain from it and to
Yeah.
learn from.
Yeah.
So before we close, what would the advice with your entire life, the impact your dad and mom have had, what would be the advice you would give to a musician, 10-year-old Brooks Wackerman, but today he's 10? What's the advice you give and the guidance you give?
I mean, really, figure out as a musician exactly what makes you happy. Is it collaborating with other musicians? Is it playing by yourself, starting a YouTube page? Is it playing in a cover band? Like, people measure success on all different degrees. So just figure out what makes you happy as a musician. And by the end of the day, even if you're only making $5 at a club, are you fulfilled with what you're doing? And then just run with that and stay focused. As you said, consistency is something that a lot of people give up on. So just stay consistent and organized, and that's really all I could advise any
So
kid.
consistently following your passion,
Yes.
not giving up, but as you just described, tapping in to finding what is my passion, what's my
Exactly.
authentic way forward, as opposed to what somebody tells me or what I think is going to make me famous or whatever it is.
Right.
But actually follow what do you really love. Some people's calling might be to be teaching drums.
Exactly.
Right? There's just
Yeah.
so many pathways to follow the instrument,
There's
but
just-
you got to find what that is what you're saying.
I think, yeah, first and foremost, just find out what that is, make that discovery, and then, chase that.
Right. Okay. And never give up.
Never give up.
Great advice from Brooks Wackerman. He practices what he preaches, out with Avenged Sevenfold. Check them out. They're going to be out for 2 years, so you have no excuse not to go and see this brilliant drummer play in his band. Modern drummer, David Frangioni. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into our podcast, and thank you, Brooks Wackerman. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.